The sun dipped low over the lonely plains of the Arizona Territory, spreading copper light across miles of dust and sagebrush as Cullen Ward, the reclusive rancher known only as the Ghost of Red Mesa, rode his buckskin, gelding along the narrow ridge, leading toward his southern pasture, thinking only of repairing the broken fence lines the last storm had torn apart. Cullen had lived alone for nearly 12 years, long enough for neighbors to forget the sound of his voice, long enough for the scars across his arms and shoulders to fade into pale memories of the war against the Apache, and long enough for him to convince himself he preferred silence over companionship. But on that quiet evening, when the wind carried nothing but the cry of a distant hawk and the soft clop of his horse's hooves, Cullen saw something that made his heart strike hard inside his chest, a figure swaying from an old juniper tree near the edge of Dead Man's Gulch. At first he thought it was another outlaw. Execution, frontier justice was cruel and swift, but as he rode closer, he saw the figure was small, far too small, and when he slid off his horse and stepped beneath the gnarled branches, the breath pulled sharp from his lungs. A girl, no older than 13, hung from a crude rope tied to the lowest limb, her wrists bound, her long black hair matted with dust, her feet barely touching the ground as though she'd been placed there rather than dropped. She wasn't dead. Her chest moved, faint, desperate, trembling, and tied around her neck was a weathered plank with charcoal-scrawled letters that made Cullen's stomach twist. "White man don't forgive." He stared at the words for a long, heavy moment, a strange ache rising inside him. For he'd seen those words before, during the raids, during the hatred, during the endless bloodshed that had taken his brother, his neighbors, his peace. Yet the girl before him was no raider, no warrior, no threat, only a terrified child left to send a message that someone wanted him, or any white man who happened to pass, to find. When he touched her arm, her eyes snapped open, wide with fear and fire, and she whispered in a hoarse, broken voice, "No kill. No kill," before fainting again. Carefully, gently, Cullen cut the rope, cradled her small, bruised body, and carried her to his horse, knowing full well what sheltering an Apache child would mean. It would stir suspicion. It would draw the attention of men who believed the only good Apache was a dead one. It would remind him of everything he once was, everything he tried to bury. But something in the girl's trembling breath told him she had been marked, not as an enemy, but as a sacrifice. Someone had meant for her to die slowly, painfully, alone. Cullen had seen enough death. He would not leave her to it. He rode through the night, keeping her wrapped in his coat, stopping every few miles to check that she still breathed, whispering words he hadn't spoken in years, soft comforts, promises that she was safe now, that he would protect her, though he didn't know if she could understand. By the time he reached his ranch house, a cabin of pine logs and stone, built by his own hands, the girl was burning with fever. Cullen brought her inside, lit the fire, and laid her on his own bed, wiping her forehead with cool water as she whispered words in Apache he could not understand. Every tremor in her voice chipped away at a wall inside him he'd sworn would never break again. As dawn crept over the horizon, the girl finally opened her eyes fully, staring at him with suspicion sharpened by fear. "Why save me?" she asked in broken English. Cullen didn't know how to answer, not at first. But then he said quietly, "Because no child deserves what was done to you." She watched him a long moment, her gaze fierce and ancient despite her young years. Then she whispered a name, "Nash Deutzer." He repeated it gently, though he knew he said it wrong. She touched her chest weakly. "Me. Nash Deutzer." It meant Big Bear in her language, probably, a name given in hope she would grow strong. But her next words chilled him. "My people. Not do this. Bad men. Not Apache. White men." Cullen's jaw clenched, rage scraping through old wounds as he remembered the sign tied around her neck. Someone wanted war rekindled. Someone wanted the territories to burn again. And they had chosen a child to start it. For the next 2 days, Cullen cared for Nash Deutzer, feeding her broth, tending her fever, guarding the cabin with his rifle across his knees. He told no one she was there, but the frontier had a way of whispering secrets. On the third evening, as the desert wind rattled the shutters, Cullen noticed hoofprints near his barn, fresh, deep, heading straight toward town. Someone had been watching. Someone knew. When he returned to the cabin, Nash Deutzer was sitting up, eyes wide with warning. "They come," she said simply. Cullen's hand tightened on the doorframe. "Who?" The girl swallowed, trembling. "Men who hang me." Outside, thunder rolled, not from the sky, but from horses approaching fast. Cullen grabbed his rifle, checked the chamber, and stood upright, feeling something awaken inside him that he thought had died. Years ago, not the soldier, not the enemy, but the protector, the man who refused to let injustice win. As the riders drew near, dust rising behind them like a storm, Cullen looked back at the girl and said, "Stay behind me. No one will hurt you again. Not while I breathe." And in that moment, without understanding why, Nash Deutzer believed him, for in the eyes of the "Let's take action and embrace inner peace." Achieving inner peace is a personal and unique journey. Here are some general approaches that might be helpful. 1. Meditate regularly. Meditation encourages a clear mind and calm spirit, allowing you to disconnect from worldly concerns and focus on your inner self. 2. Maintain physical health. Regular exercise, a healthy diet, and good sleep habits can significantly improve your mental state. 3. Spend time in nature, whether it's a walk in the park, stargazing, or listening to the ocean. Spending time in nature can effectively help you achieve peace. Let's take action and embrace inner peace.